I think it's that time of the podcast where we address our old friend, the forgotten child that is often the state of sadness for a lot of players, the old Crucible. And I think you'd probably add Gambit to that as well. They're both kind of the punching bag jokes at this point of just
Crucible is the forgotten child that ends up on the milk carton. Gambit is the forgotten child that is forgotten. Let's put it that way.
But what do you think they should do with Gambit, for example? Because it is very limited as far as what they can do. I mean, the mode is, 2018 it came out with Forsaken. So it's getting on. There's not really a Crucible is a lot more of a basic, just multiplayer PvP experience. So it has a bit more shelf life. But Gambit is just simply, obviously a very cool mode, PvP, VE, but there's not really much they can do with it. It's a weird one.
I think Gambit is an amazing core set of ideas for a game that shouldn't be in Destiny. Gambit in itself is not a game alone, but like the core idea set is something that I would love to see in another product, in another title.
Right.
I think that Gambit will forever be held back because Destiny's sandbox is trying to balance around PvE and then PvP and then third it's trying to balance around Gambit.
Yeah.
You know? You have people who always complained about any weapon that was powerful at the time being in Gambit, to start off with it was Sleeper Simulant and then following on from that it was Queenbreaker and then following on from that it was anything from Leviathan's Breath to Eyes of Tomorrow to 1000 Voices. They've done multiple passes trying to address it, but ultimately I think the game of Gambit works best when you will be able to sit there and give people a more curated experience. I feel like my best memories of Gambit, hilariously enough, come from the preview stuff that I got for Forsaken, like my times playing Gambit at E3 and Gamescom, those were the points at which I was sitting there and being like, man, this is great.
That was a lot of fun.
Like, and I think the part of the reason for that is because you did have those limited loadout options, This is back in the days when, you could use all the new subclasses and whatnot, and there was some variety to what you could pick. But you had, like, one auto rifle and one pulse rifle and a sidearm and a shotgun and a rocket launcher and one exotic, which was an SMG or something. Like, you had a very limited and curated selection of weapons there. And I feel as though if Bungie is going to split something off, they kind of want to blend Gambit with something almost like Apex. I don't think a battle royale is quite the way to go with it, but you want something which takes the core ideas of Gambit and builds upon them to create something which is not hamstrung by the balancing of Destiny 2 as a bigger experience. Keeping it in the game, sure. I'm one of those people where I'm kind of in the middle. I know that people lament that nothing happens in Gambit, but I'm actually okay with it just existing as a sort of, as a kind of an odd appendage to the game. Like, I genuinely am fine with them either keeping it and doing nothing or trying to develop more of it. I think removing it would be a shame. But, if Crucible and PvE are more worthy of development time, then I'm certainly not going to get up on my soapbox and be like, Gambit requires more love too. No, I'm honestly happy for Gambit to just stay along and just be what it is. As far as I'm concerned, like, it's part of the core Destiny experience, but I don't take Gambit that seriously. I'm not one of those people that sweats it anymore. Like, I think a lot of people still do, which, by the way, is not the way you should play Destiny in the grand scheme of things. Play it to have fun,
Yeah, and similar with Crucible. But, I think Gambit, you see a lot of talk about just the concept of removing it, which, again, I'm not sure if that's a backseat gamer thing. Of just delete it, just get rid of it and just wipe it. But it is, I think the main reason that people aren't happy with it would be because it is still pinnacle. There's still bounties attached to it. There's still a lot of challenges. So if you want to be a completionist, there are a lot of ways where you do kind of have to play Gambit in order to do the ritual activity. So a lot of people don't like being forced to play this mode that seems outdated, but I don't really see them removing. I don't think they should. I think I definitely don't hate Gambit. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to Gambit. I wouldn't say I love it, but I do. I can't say I play it often, but I do still quite enjoy it. It's a fun experience. Wasn't a fan of. I do like back in the day when you could melt bosses, so you did have the ability to just if you had a good team coordination, you could just melt the bosses and speed through it. But having the immunity shields and having it gated, it just never feels satisfying. I guess it's more fair because it's, on some team that is just far outmatched another team, and they just melt the boss before another team's even done collecting their motes. But yeah, it's a weird one. I don't really know. Again, I'm glad I'm not a developer. It's not my job to think about these things, but I don't know what the solution is. But I can't see them removing it anytime soon, but I can't see them also doing any drastic overhauls to it.
Yeah. I mean, I know Skill Up, for example, he judges part of mainline expansions based on Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit, because they're all part of the core playlist activities. 3, yeah. And like, I get it, but also I really don't think that's how Gambit should be judged. And honestly, with that in mind, I think I agree. I think you should see the pinnacle stuff removed from Gambit and just have it as maybe powerful stuff instead. Because it's one of those things of you shouldn't be forced to play this thing when it's not having all the attention driven to it. But I still think that it is something where it would be good to have it in the game. Like, we've done this before with sunsetting. And whilst Gambit is a different conversation, I know some people would happily see it thrown into a pit. I think that it is one of those moments of like, Bungie should have learned their lesson by now of taking content away from players that's been there for years is probably not a good idea. It's one thing with seasonal stuff that goes away every year and there's narrative reasons for it, yeah, sure. But when Gambit leaves, I don't know, you may have similar discussions with it, you may not. It's kind of a gray area. It's a very important question to ask, basically.